Let's move now to Evan Mobley's injury.
Man.
Evan Mobley has sprained an ankle. It seems like he's going to be out for a minute here.
Yeah.
Like that's kind of the impression
The
that
Athletic reporting was that I read an article said will be some time, will be out a while, like quote unquote. It seems like legit time.
yeah, it seems like it's going to be some real time here. And, Mobley has dealt with injuries throughout the course of the season. He's probably going to end up playing I don't know, 45 ish games. It feels like he's at 38 right now. And we'll see what it looks like if he's able to get back for 5 or 6 at the end. Right.
Yep.
So I want to talk about A, what this means for the Cavs moving forward, and B, what we've thought of Evan Mobley's season, because this was the most important season of Evan Mobley's career for a number of reasons, right? A, Donovan Mitchell is entering next season a walk year. So they needed to figure out what the right roster fit is around him, if this roster fit can work around him, and if they need to move Donovan Mitchell in the offseason if it doesn't work around him. They needed to figure out, can Jarrett Allen and Evan Mobley work together in a front court and get the best possible results? And on top of it, they needed to figure out Evan needed to have a great year in order to solidify the Cavs giving him a certain max contract. So across the board, his third year, and the third year for NBA players is always incredibly important. This was undeniably an incredibly important year, and it's a bummer that we're not going to get to see Evan Mobley as much as we had hoped this year. So let's start here. What does this mean for Cleveland first? What does this mean for the Cavs that Evan Mobley is going to miss some substantial time?
I mean, I think it's the same thing we just talked about in terms of you wanted to continue to build this chemistry between those two bigs. Here's the scary thing with Cleveland. Donovan Mitchell has missed the last game, and then I think a couple more because he got a PRP shot in his left knee for a bone bruise. Strus is currently day to day. I don't think that's as much of a long-term thing, but like they are not healthy right now. Cleveland, honestly, probably has not got enough credit for the back end of the rotation, like Sam Merrill giving them real time, and Niang and Karis LeVert and those type of guys giving them real minutes and real time and playing well. And that's kind of helped keep them afloat, along with how good Jarrett Allen. I watched the game the other day, and I was like,
awesome.
Jarrett Allen, he was the best player on the floor, with all due respect to Darius Garland. And I know what Darius Garland can do. And I'm a big fan of Darius Garland. But Jarrett Allen was just everywhere. Defensively, he was a nightmare on the offensive boards. They couldn't keep him off the offensive boards. He has a little soft touch in the floater, can use both hands. I think he stopped and hit a mid-range, 15-foot jump shot off the short roll. Just so impressed with him. Can they make a run without Mobley? I want to say no, because Mobley's really good defensively, and he's one of your best players. So I don't think they make a run. And again, as much time as you can get with those guys playing together. I guess I didn't realize Mobley had only played that many games. So that's not a ton of games for these guys to develop that chemistry, along with Spida being in and out of the lineup and those things. So it's another situation where it's going to have to come together in the playoffs. And it's a team as talented as they are. Like, I love these dudes. We talked about Max Strus is a guy that we love. Shout out to Paul. Now I know. Okay. Garland, Donovan Mitchell, Mobley, Sam Merrill off the bench. I think LeVert has played really well. Like, all of these guys down the line. Dean Wade had a huge game the other night in their comeback win over the Celtics. Hit a ton of threes. I love the individual pieces. I'm just not sure it all fits together to make a deep playoff run, and this injury doesn't help build that chemistry anymore.
Yeah, so that's definitely right. We had someone in the comments, Callum Barber, shout out Callum Barber, mentioned that I feel like their record is better without Mobley. A big reason why that's the case, if it is, I haven't looked at the exact records to be honest, but I do know this. Their schedule eased up at a really great time for them to be able to survive the Garland injury that occurred earlier this year and the Mobley injury. Like, they went through a stretch here where it was just kind of pulling it up. It was Washington back-to-back, San Antonio, Brooklyn, Chicago. Then they had a game against Milwaukee that they won by a crazy amount of points. And that was a game, though, that Giannis missed. So they missed a Giannis game. And then they beat the Atlanta Hawks. They beat the Magic. They lost to the Bucks. They beat the Bucks again, bizarrely. And then Mobley like came back like right in this window around here. He missed a game, if I remember correctly, against Memphis as well, like right around that time too. So their schedule really eased up like kind of at the right time, which is why at the end of the day they were able to like kind of work through a lot of those injury questions that they've had this season. Look, I'm really bummed because I think that the more that I watched this Cavs team, the more interested I was in them in the playoffs. Getting real contributions from guys like Dean Wade, who could come in and space the floor. He drilled like 5 threes in that game against Boston a couple nights ago. It was fantastic to watch. He had 20. He was great in that game. Getting real contributions from guys like Sam Merrill, getting Max Strus obviously in the fold. Max is kind of a different level player than those guys, obviously, but like the thing that they missed last season was a guy that they could put in the corner and could knock down shots, right? Yeah. They desperately needed somebody who could actually space the court for guys like Donovan Mitchell and Darius Garland and for their bigs to be able to work within the construct of this roster build, right?
Yep.
Now they have guys like they have Strus, they have Merrill, they have Dean Wade that they can throw in there, and you can't sag off of those guys as much. Max, you can't sag off of. Sam Merrill, you can't sag off of.
Okoro's shooting 40% this year, Sam. 40% on 3 attempts.
Teams will still sag off of
Isaac,
no. But your point is valid.
42% on corner threes. So, like, again, they will, but he may, there's a better chance this year than any other year that he may make them pay. Like, you want to play off of him? Yeah. Isaac Okoro may make 2 back-to-back catch and shoot corner threes, and then that changes – the scheme.
It's absolutely right. And like you said too, I know that if you look at like the advanced numbers, Jared Allen is having like close to as good of a season in some advanced metrics, like slightly worse of a season as compared to what he's had recently. I think Jarrett has been the most underrated player in the NBA.
He's been awesome. Yeah.
I think he has been so good every single time I watch him. He's clearly like carrying the load for this team on the defensive end in such a real way. I think he's been outstanding on that end this season. He's averaging 16 and 11 right now. He's playing great defense at the rim. I truly just love everything we've seen from Jared Allen this season. I love that experience. Man, I'm really bummed about what this means for the Cavs because Evan is like a real defensive, dynamic player. We'll talk about the offense, I think, in the where is this going with Evan Mobley section a little bit more, because I think that's interesting too. But man, I am bummed about this injury because the Cavs have played as well as they have recently.
One thing, and I know this is supposed to be an Evan Mobley conversation, but Jarrett Allen, every time I get a chance to talk, watch his hand placement in ball screen coverage. He is so good and so active with his hands, not just putting them straight out, not just putting them straight up. He'll put it in the pocket passing window first, and then he'll move it. And like, he just gets deflection. He's so good. Jarrett Allen is so good. 3rd in defensive rating. Like, there's a reason why. And it works really well because Jarrett is so good in the ball screen coverages. Then you can let Evan just kind of play off ball in that roamer role. And, that could be really effective in the playoffs. You get matchups, you pinpoint the guy you're going to let stand in the corner and shoot threes, like we just talked about Okoro for them. Other teams are going to have those guys, Sam, at least at different times, or you're going to force them to make substitutions. And there's not a whole lot of guys better than Evan Mobley covering ground, being the low man, weak side rim protection, and he rebounds really well. So, hopefully he can get back, right? I mean, even with an ankle, even though it doesn't sound good, we're over a month still before we get into the playoffs. They're going to be a top 3 seed based on the seedings right now. I can't imagine them falling below that. If they can get healthy, it's interesting at least. The defense is going to be good enough, and then can they find the offense and make that work?
So this is where I kind of want to transition into the Evan Mobley piece of this. So Mobley's averaging 15.6 points, 10.2 rebounds, 3.1 assists. Something like a 1.6 to 1 assist to turnover ratio. Great defensive player. He's been much more efficient this year. If you look at the overall like standing of his true shooting percentage and things like that, he has a 61.5 true shooting percentage this season. That is 6% above league average. Last year, he was only 2% above league average. His rookie year, he was 3% below league average. So we've seen like a nice steady growth in terms of his efficiency. Most of it comes from just general shot selection, which I'll talk about in a minute. But what has been your overall thought on this Mobley season when he's been on the court? Because
Yeah,
I'll be honest, like I feel like Cavs fans get a little bit upset when people feel underwhelmed by Mobley. I'm not underwhelmed by the player. I think I am a little bit underwhelmed by the lack of growth in his game. And I'll kind of talk about that a little bit more offensively after I kind of give you the floor. Like, I think that it's reasonable to have some worries on like where this goes offensively at this point.
I mean, that's where I was going to go. When you said that Cavs fans get frustrated, I was like, well, I feel like I've been pretty good to Cavs fans and they kind of like me, but they may not like me after this. I just gave him his flowers defensively. Most games I've watched, I've come away underwhelmed. And like you said, it's not necessarily that he's a bad player. It's not that he's not productive. It's not that he's not efficient. You just laid out all the numbers. We don't need to go back through it. But I guess I just expected to see a little bit more. I know sometimes we get hung up on like spacing the floor, but that hasn't come around at all in terms of his 3-point shooting. He's taking less this year per game than he did in his rookie year or his second year. He is making it 31%, but not even one attempt per game. His free throw attempts have gone down. And so the offensive rebounding is great. I watch a game and I think he has some passing flashes. I watch a game and he'll do some move. I'm like, oh my gosh, like that was impressive. A same foot, same hand, scoop finish. In that Celtics game, I love the mentality he had. I thought he tried to be really aggressive. He struggled because Porzingis is pretty good defensively. And so I like the mentality. Maybe it's not always there. Maybe there's just too many cooks with Garland, with Mitchell. Strus takes some usage, even some of the guys off the bench. I find myself just wanting a little bit more, Sam, from him on the offensive end, a little more production, a little bit more floor spacing, just kind of the all around package of what he can bring. And so I find myself wanting more offensively.
Yeah, I do too. I feel like he has not taken a step in any real way as a shot creator is my main worry. If you look at the overall, numbers this season, he's taken 27 pull-up jumpers in 38 games. It's actually like a bit lower than what he was taking last season. He's only made 33% of them, most of which are mid-range shots, if not all of them. I think all of them might be mid-range shots. Has only taken 43 catch and shoot jumpers this season, mostly threes, only a 45.3 true shooting percentage on those. The shooting just has not come around in any real way. The reason he's more efficient is because he is getting far more shots at the rim. Whereas last season, he only took 40.4% of his shots
50.
within 3 feet of the basket. This season, he's taking 50% of his shots within 3 feet of the basket. This year, 76.6% of his shots are assisted at the rim. Last season, it was 78%. So that's not really changing, right? Average shot distance last season from 2-point range was 5.2 feet from the basket. This season, it's actually even closer. It's 4.4 feet from the basket. He just converts at the rim really well. Like, he is a great finisher. He's made 73% of his shots at the rim, and that's to be commended, right? But for him to take that next step as a shot creator, I think that the critical thing is he is going to have some threat of a shot, right? He's going to have to be able to create a shot in some way. And to me, I've always liked his flexibility as a driver. I've always liked the ability out of spot ups. But for him to be able to like weaponize that as a passer, for him to be able to weaponize that as an actual driver, he needs the threat of the shot. Yeah. Like, you need to be able to close out on him. Like, he needs to be able to get the ball in the mid post and make a mid-range jumper and like keep the defender off balance as much as anything else. Right now, I just feel like defenders like don't care if he shoots, and they don't think he's going to shoot. And it really limits what I think he's capable of on offense.
Well, and it's going to maximize in the playoffs, right? Like when we talk about how teams guard people in the playoffs, it's going to maximize even more. I mean, the fact they're 16th in offensive rating, I think speaks to some of the other talent. But when you essentially have two non-shooting bigs, I was looking at B-ball reference as you were going through that. Like his shot distance has gone lower every single year. I mean, he's not. You would hope, like you almost could excuse it his freshman year, or excuse me, rookie year, but you would assume that like it would start to slowly push out, especially playing next to Jarrett Allen. Like it just made so much sense, not just to maximize Evan's potential offensively, but to maximize Evan and Jarrett playing together offensively. And like it's kind of surprising they're as effective as they are with neither of them able to do it. But that's a great point. I think sometimes, I don't know, maybe this is just me, people probably get frustrated of how much we emphasize shooting and talk about floor spacing and all of this. This is why, Sam. This is why. And you talked about it exactly right. It's because he can drive. He can pass. He does have like finesse finishes, explosive finishes. None of it matters if he can't attack a closeout. And you can't attack a closeout if the defender doesn't close out to you.
Right.
And so he's got to be able to do it just a little bit. And right now, he hasn't even if he was progressing, like, wouldn't you be happier if he was shooting 32% on 4 3-point attempts a game or something like that, or 3 attempts a game, as opposed to it trickling down below 1 attempt a game? I would just, maybe they can't afford to do it because they're trying to win a championship.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like, I don't know if they can afford to do it because he's made like 21% of his threes the first 2 years of his career. This year he's up to like 30% or something like that, but he's only taking 1 per game. If he could make, 3 or 4 of his 1 per game, or 3, if he could make 30% of his like 3 or 4 per game, yes, I would be for him shooting more just to try and like bust up the flow of the offense and like how defenders engage with him a little bit more. I think that'd be valuable. The other piece of the equation here is he might just be a center. And like that's okay. Like if he's a center and not a 4-man, that's totally fine. I actually think his frame has looked better this season. I think he looks a little bit thicker through his core, through his chest, through everything like that. Like I wonder if he might continue to like grow into just being a big. And if he's like a mobile big who can defend multiple positions, can be switchable. I mean, you can be Bam Adebayo and be the 5, right? The problem is that they have to play him at the 4 right now because of Jarrett Allen.
Yeah.
And where this goes for the Cavs is that Evan either needs to learn to shoot or like have the threat of the jumper, or he needs to be a 5. It needs to continue to put on weight, continue to be able to like deal with 5s across the court, be able to like play the roles that guys like Chet Holmgren, Victor Wembanyama, those guys do at the 5. And I'm for that. Like, I think that's a really cool idea too. And now that he's through the first 3 years of his career, he's a little bit older now. Like, I think the wear and tear of his body, and as we say this, he's missed quite a bit of time this year, but like you would hope that the wear and tear can work for his body, right? If he's a 5, I think look, it doesn't matter. Wasserman, or I think his agency is Wasserman. It certainly was pre-draft. They're going to go in and ask for a max because he was finalist for Defensive Player of the Year last year. He's a 15-10 guy. Of course, they're going to go in and ask for a max. The Cavs are going to have to max him because somebody else will max him. So, like, if they were to say, "Hey, yeah, go ahead, hit the open market," somebody's maxing him. No questions asked, right?
Yep.
Where I wonder if this goes is if they are going to have to make a choice on Allen and Mobley, and this playoff run is going to ultimately make the decision on it. And to me, like it is, as much as we talk about Jarrett Allen being incredibly valuable and being maybe the most underrated player in the league this year, I do think you have to pick Mobley just because of the contract control, that piece of it. Allen has 2 years left at a real bargain number. Mobley would have at least 5 years left beyond this. To me, I do think you would have to see what you could get for Allen if it doesn't work in the playoffs this year with those two.
And with everything we just said about Mobley spacing the floor and lack of progress, like he still does offer more versatility offensively as a 5 than even Jarrett Allen does, right? Like there's at least the potential to do some of those things along with just the mobility, attacking a closeout, all of those things. And so, yeah, I think because like we would believe in like we don't think Evan Mobley's having issues if he's the primary drop coverage defender, and probably offers even more versatility if he's in that situation. As much as I like him playing off the ball in that roamer role, he can do all of the things we just talked about with Jarrett Allen as well. He has the length. As you talked about, it seems like his body's coming around a little bit more where he can take the beating that it takes in that role compared to playing off ball. And so it seems like, as YouTube user says, not many 5s get and deserve rookie max extensions. Yeah. But also like not many non-shooting 4s are going to get that either. I mean, the name that comes to mind as we talk about this is Ryan Dunn. You and I believe wholeheartedly that Ryan Dunn is the best defender in college basketball and probably the best defender in the draft. And he's not in either of our lotteries right now. He's probably going to end up later in the first round because there is no offensive game. So a non-floor spacing 4 is an issue in its own right as well. And unfortunately, right now, that's what Evan Mobley has been through 3 years of his NBA career, as good as he is defensively.
Yeah, and he's better than he's so
yeah. No, I didn't.
To be clear.
Yeah. Oh, light years ahead of Ryan Dunn. I just was using it as an example, but yes.
Yeah, but like with Evan, it feels like they mostly use him now like as a roller in the dunker spot. They'll use him in like dribble handoffs, and then like have him roll to the basket off of those. He'll cut from the corner a lot of the time. Like they will space him to the corner, and then he'll just like time his cut perfectly. I like Evan Mobley's offensive instincts.
Yeah, sure.
It's just the skill needs to catch up. Like the shooting skill is going to have to be there at some point, or else he's probably a 5. And it's okay if he's a 5.
Yep.
But I don't even know that he's less valuable as a 5. It just makes it so they have to change their roster build around him if he is a 5.
Yeah, I have no issues with him playing the 5 other than Jarrett Allen's really, really good on a really, really good. Like think if Jarrett Allen was making more money and wasn't on this contract that I think we just said was one of the top 10 best contracts in the NBA. If Jarrett Allen wasn't on that contract, wasn't as good as what he's been, etc., I don't think any of us would have any problems with saying, hey, Evan Mobley needs to go play center for 30 to 35 minutes a night. There would be no issues. Yeah. The problem is for him to do that, you have to trade one of your 4 best players on a ridiculously positive contract. And there's some sting in that. Like there's a little bit of, I don't even want to say, it's not even risk. It just sucks. Depending on what can you trade Jarrett Allen for? Because maybe you go get, you're probably not going to get the right value, but you may be able to go get someone that really fits your roster. And it may end up being a win because Mobley's thriving even more as a 5-man. You trade Jarrett Allen for another wing/forward who does space the floor, play some defense, and your roster may make more sense now.
Yeah. The space where Allen makes sense, I've talked about it before, I think is Memphis, but let's not like continue to focus on that just because to me it's about Evan and where his development goes this offseason. Like for Evan to reach a ceiling, it's going to have to be with the jumper. It's okay if he doesn't shoot. He's still going to be incredibly valuable. Honestly, like he still might be worth a max, even if he doesn't shoot it, but it makes it harder to build the roster around him if he doesn't shoot it at the end of the day. And, hopefully he gets back on the court this year. We get to see it in the playoffs again, because again, like we talked about Minnesota, this is a team that needs to figure out, can you win with Evan Mobley and Jarrett Allen on the court in the playoffs? Can you win with this 4-person core? Because they're under an even bigger time crunch than Minnesota is.
With Donovan Mitchell.
So it's even more important for them.
And it didn't end well last year.